Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode and edition of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast, where I have such a cool job where, as the host, I get to meet people who are doing cool things, changing people's lives and making a difference every single day. So Dr. Jim Hoven here, and I have an incredible guest today. My guest deals with something that we all love, and what is that? Puppies. He deals with someone that we all love, and that's veterans and emergency first responders. So today it is such an honor for me to meet with Mr. Frank Griggs and his group, the Heroes Puppies for Life. This is a nonprofit that you guys are you're just going to want to snuggle up, cuddle up with, and just hang out like you would with any puppy. So we're going to hear the story about how this great group got started. And so hold on, be ready to have your heart warmed and understand what a great group this is. So first of all, Frank, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate it. I love to share our program. I really do believe in what we do, and it's an incredible journey in life. And so thank you for having us here, because I'd love to share it.
Yes, well, I can't wait for you to share it and to tell us, this audience, what it is that you do. So I've kind of highlighted it at the highest levels of saying that you guys provide puppies to emergency responders, and that includes our military heroes, our police officers, our fire department, EMT, paramedics, those types of groups, right? And if I understand it right, these puppies serve a very specific purpose. They're not just giving these people a dog as a pet, correct?
Correct. Yes, what we do is we place the puppy with an individual, veteran or a first responder, who are living with post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD it's very self-destructive. I've lived with it since I was 19. My trauma occurred in Vietnam in 1969. Never realized I had it until later in life, actually until I was 62.
You lived with it for almost 45 years?
I just thought that's the way life was supposed to be. And I had a major episode occur when my grandson turned 2, which was related back to 1969. And I became the poster boy for PTSD. Pretty much had every symptom that you can imagine, and went into hiding, which most people do with PTSD. They don't want anything to do with society. I retired, and finally I just decided I needed to get help. Went and got help and sought treatment. I'm still in treatment. I stay in treatment. But one of the things that happened is that I was the commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart in Arvada. And
you won the Purple Heart, did you
yes,
not?
Sir.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
You were a Marine.
Yes, sir.
And you gave of yourself and of your body for our country and were awarded the Purple Heart. Thank you for your service. I appreciate it so much. And I know I speak for everyone listening.
Appreciate that. Yes, I was a Marine for over 8 years and thoroughly loved the Marine Corps. Thoroughly loved it. But my wife didn't love it at the time, and that's okay. It's all water under the bridge, and there was a reason for everything happening. I look at everything that way, is that there's a purpose behind everything that happens. And even there was a purpose behind it. So as the commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, at the end of every year, I would give the chapter a challenge to say, okay, this year, this is what we want to do. So in 2014, we decided that we would place one puppy with a veteran living with PTSD. At first, we were going to buy a trained dog. And trained dogs are anywhere from $5,000 to $35,000 a piece. And obviously, Chapter of the Military of the Purple Heart is not a big organization, so that was kind of out of our monetary reach. So we decided that, based on some research, that we would place a puppy with an individual veteran, and they would go through training together, and we would pay for that training.
So let me stop you there. How did you decide to, why a puppy? How did you connect puppies to PTSD? What does this all have to do with each other? What does the dog do for a veteran with PTSD?
Dr. Hoven, that's amazing, because everything, like I said, everything happens for a purpose. There was a research study out of Palo Alto in California where they placed dogs with veterans they went through the basic canine training, and then once the dog was trained with basic canine training, then they turned it over to a service dog training organization. And the study never said whether or not those veterans that trained the dog got to keep them. And in my mind, that was really cold, because you have these men or women that bond with this dog and then turn around and lose that bond. And that's pretty tough with PTSD. So we decided that we would not do that. Instead, we would use a puppy instead of an older dog. And a lot of it just happened. It's more circumstantial, it just happens. And what we found is that the puppies are a clean slate. They don't carry the bad behaviors that other dogs might have. So with the puppies, I decided that I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know what I didn't know. So I went back to school and I became an advanced canine trainer and a canine behavior specialist.
Yes, you have those two certifications. I noticed. What's that involved? What's the process of that?
That was schooling online, and there was coursework, and there was also study work that you had to do in the community. It took me about 2.5 years to get that, and really found out that I loved what I was doing, and really found out that I really love working with puppies because they are so forgiving and so loving, and they just want to please everybody in the world, and they're not threatening to people. And we found that with the veterans is that they can feel a little bit more comfortable. The first couple of weeks is kind of hard for them because with PTSD, they focus on the inside. And when we put that puppy with them, when it's 8 weeks old, they have to stop focusing inside, and now they have to focus on this little tiny fur ball. And that's kind of hard for some people to make that transition in PTSD from focusing here, now focusing outside.
And do they need training? Do these folks that are awarded a puppy, do they need training before the puppy gets there? Because I can imagine if they're going through PTSD type symptoms in an active and ongoing way, like they're not used to taking care of something else. So do they have to be prepped prior to receiving the puppy?
Exactly, yes. And so what we developed was, so first thing, we developed our own training program because I couldn't find one that was no harm and no fear training. I'm big on no harm and force-free training. My philosophy is that if you train a dog out of fear, it won't respond because of that same fear. And that's not what we want with a service dog. We want it to be able to respond without being afraid of getting hurt or anything like that. So, but what we did in this case is exactly what you just brought up was we found that veterans were having a really hard time making that transition in the first 2 weeks because they were not prepared for it. So we created what we call our puppy preschool. And puppy preschool is designed to start 2 weeks before their puppy comes home and helps them prepare mentally and physically and even financially for that puppy to come into their house. So it's not just dropping a dog in their lap anymore. They're prepared for it and they're ready for it psychologically. And it's really amazing because they look so forward to this little puppy coming home. And that preparation is tremendously important because we did lose veterans in the first couple weeks just because of their PTSD. Puppies are puppies, and they get rowdy at times, and they run around, and they bark, and they do things besides potty training. It really was something that we said, okay, we've got to prepare them for this rather than just drop the puppy in their lap. So they go through a puppy preschool. It's actually 4 weeks long. It's online. And they learn everything they need to know about the stages, the life stages of the puppy, how to potty train, the correct way to play with a dog. And they learn some basic canine behaviors. And so they go through that 4-week puppy preschool. They get the puppy in week 2. And the next 2 weeks are just them bonding with the dog and working with the dog and getting that relationship built between the two. But we start the bonding very early. I'm a big believer in what I call relationship bond, where the two bond with each other. And that's why I don't want to use fear or harm-based training, because that bond will not be there if there's fear there. So, but we take and we start building the bond with them. So the day they get the puppy, when they come for puppy pickup day, we always set it at a distance to where they have to drive to come and get it. So if they live like in Fort Collins, they have to come to Denver to pick up their puppy. But the thing is that they can't drive themselves home. They have to hold the puppy on the way home. Because if you think about it, that puppy's been in the litter for 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's not with its litter, its mother or anything else like that. And so that's a really hard time for a puppy. So by making the individual hold that puppy all the way home,
it creates that bond, that connection.
It starts that bond immediately. And they have to be the caregiver. So they have to do everything for the puppy. They can't pass it off on somebody else. And that's what makes it so unique, is that they start bonding together. Now, a lot of service dog programs will take a dog 1 or 2 years old and train it to become a service dog. And that's okay, but my philosophy is that I think that bonding is going to be tougher, because if I take it and place it with somebody to train it, there's a bond that's built right there. And then I turn around and give it with another person. Now we have to recreate another bond again. And sometimes I know in those cases that bond doesn't work. And that's not what we want. So we put the puppy with the individual from the very beginning, and they grow together.
And is there someone that does the training in that interim and going through that's with this hero in order to help them do it the right way?
Yeah, absolutely. They start their formal training about week 11 or 12 in puppy's age, and that's when we start giving them the formal training. We have 9 modules, and each module is 4 weeks long. We go through basic canine training, and we have set our standards a little bit higher than retail standards because, again, I believe that a service dog has to be set to a higher standard than just a pet. And the retail trainers, that's what they're doing, is training a household pet just to be a good citizen, and that's okay. But I don't know if you've ever been out and about and you see dogs barking and growling. They're in a vest. In a lot of cases, those are not service dogs, real service dogs that meet the ADA requirements. Somebody might have just put a vest on the dog. A real service dog, once it's trained, should not have that behavior in public. Mm-hmm. So we set our standards very high on the training. So we created our own evaluations. We created 3 separate evaluations: a beginner, which takes place in the 3rd module, and then we take an intermediate, which takes place at the end of the 4th module, and then we have the advanced, which is at the very end of the entire program, which is like a 2.5-hour public access test. And so the difference is that not only is the dog evaluated, but the handler is evaluated as well. We standardized everything, because when we first started, we had people training in German and Italian, and they were all using different hand signals and gestures, and so it got very complicated in trying to do the training program. So we standardized all of our requests. We don't use the word command in our program. And the reason why we don't use the word command is because most of the people that we work with come from a command and control environment.
Oh.
And so they're used to saying, get this done, and it needs to be done. We don't want that kind of relationship between the person and the dog. So we use a request or an ask, and these are visual cues and verbal cues rather than a command.
And so is it a tone difference? So
yes,
I
sir.
could see, like we've trained our dogs to sit with a signal like this and down with a signal like that.
Yes, sir.
But we say sit, down, right? So is there something different?
Yeah, what we do is we teach them actually how to communicate with the dog. There is a video that we share with them on how to communicate, because dogs don't think on the same frame that we do, and they have instinctive communications within them. And
the pack? Within
yes,
the pack?
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And so we use pitch, tone, and frequency. And so they have to slow down their requests. So it's not sit, it's sit. Because if I go sit, in my mind, I'm telling the dog that I want it to sit. But in reality, what I'm telling the dog based on its communication level is that this may not be a safe situation. And so what happens is that we have our recipients at times will go like that, and I'll just walk over to the puppy and I'll go, sit, and it'll immediately sit down because the communication is, they think they're sending one way, but it's actually being received another way. And so we teach them how to communicate correctly, but we also standardize all of our cues too. We don't use good boy or good girl. We use the word yes as our positive marker word. Yes is a very powerful word. I was noticing as I was coming in, some of the motivational writings on the wall here, and it's just really cool. And actually, there's one in one of the conference rooms I saw that I'm going to take a picture of because I liked it so much. But we use yes because we hear no so much in our society. Everything's no, 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 no. And particularly with PTSD, you live with no all the time. And so what we want to do is get them to start changing their thought process to positive rather than negative. So they use yes. And with good boy or good girl, if the dog is out greeting individuals or whatever, and it's doing a bad behavior, everybody's going to say, oh, what a good boy, or oh, what a good girl. Well, if it's performing a bad behavior right at that point in time, they just marked that bad behavior as a good behavior. So that's why we use the word yes. We also use the word instead of no, because no is an emphatic word. And so is the negative marker word that we use. And we teach them how to communicate in ways that instead of just saying and then leaving it there, it's kind of like correcting a child. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, parents would say all the time, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. But then at times they would never tell me what I was supposed to be doing instead of don't do.
Makes sense.
So what we tell them to do is that when they use a negative marker word, to let the dog know what it should be doing at that time, instead of just saying, this way. And we change the pitch as well. If you watch dogs when they play, they don't generally bark at a low growl. They bark at a high pitch. And so pitch can have an inflection too. I mean, if you watch alligators or elephants, when they're telling people get away, or even a dog that's, getting ready to bite, they use a very low pitch. And so we teach them how to communicate the right way with the dog. And it really does work. But it helps the individual too, because what it does is causes them to think things out a little bit more and calm down.
Amazing. When you're looking at, you guys have thought all this through, and I know that you have, so I'm going to take one step back in your history. You have gone through a theological certification as well, right? You have a certification in theology. With your connection on the spiritual side and the human side and these hero side and the love of dogs, there was something on the website that I found interesting, and I wrote it down, that there may be something between the theology background you have and the mission of your group, which you says, helping to heal human souls one puppy at a time. Was there a conscious connection between the concepts you found and learned about God and connected with and this work that you're doing?
Yes. In 1969, when I went through my trauma, I lost 4 Marines on either side of me in a mortar attack out in the middle of nowhere. And I was one of the survivors. And I lived with survivor's guilt for a long, long time. I couldn't figure out why I survived. It was my 19th birthday, but why did I survive when this guy over here had a 2-year-old son? And I couldn't come to grips with that. And so throughout my entire life with PTSD, I did any number of jobs that you can imagine because I was trying to find why was I left behind. And
so you didn't feel spared, you felt guilty.
I felt guilty, yes. And that's where survivor's guilt comes into play. And a lot of people with post-traumatic stress disorder have survivor's guilt because they may live and a friend standing right next to them may die. And so that survivor's guilt can be pretty tough. And it was tough on me because I couldn't find exactly where I was supposed to be in my mind. And if anybody were to talk to me now and ask me, I would say, without a doubt, I am where I'm supposed to be. I am here for a reason. So the answer to that is that I don't know if you ever saw the movie Saving Private Ryan. At the very end, where he's in the cemetery and he looks at his wife and he says, "Tell me that I'm a good man," because he wanted the captain to know that he had done what he was supposed to do. That's the kind of the way I look at this, is because I want those men to know that there was a reason for it, and it means a lot to me. In fact,
wow.
That's one of the reasons why I started this, because I needed, in my life, I needed to find what was the reason. And this really is the reason for me. And nobody could convince me any differently. I mean, you could give me any kind of argument, and I probably would just say, yeah, but nope. So, and it does have a connection. It does have a connection. Now, I don't preach to all the people, but I live my life in a way that's, I try to be exemplary to them, and help them get over this, because PTSD is no fun. I mean, seriously, we've got guys that, have issues. They won't go out. They won't go anywhere. But see, in our program, they have to take that puppy out. So they have to socialize their dog. Like I said, they have to be trained to be in public. So we give them a weekly socialization requirement, and every week they have to go to different locations. And that gets them out of the house, and it stops them from isolating. So they're no longer going to sit in their basement. They've got to go out on a weekly basis. But one of the other things that's different from our program than a regular service dog training program is most service dogs are not allowed to greet. We want our puppies to greet. So if the person's not triggering at that time, they need to let their puppy be greeted by an individual. And what that does is that I tell them all the time is, look, these people are not coming up to you to beat you about the head and shoulders. They're coming up because they see this little tiny fur ball and they want to pet it. And in most cases, you're invisible anyway. It's just this little fur ball that they want to see. But the puppy becomes the tool to get them to start talking to people again and getting them back into society again. And slowly through, and we call it baby steps, through baby steps and desensitizing them, they start getting back into public again. They start getting part of their life back. And their families start doing things together again, that they didn't do because of PTSD. And I can, show you any number of spouses that will say, thank you for giving my husband back to me, or, being my dad again. And I've got one veteran that swears up and down that he was the worst father in the world until he got his puppy and went through our program. And I'm not using that to brag, but I'm using it because it does work. Yeah. And, it's amazing to me that they have such an ability to heal those wounded souls.
It's interesting to me. Two things. One is you have the first puppy from the program. Was that designed intentionally because you needed the support for the PTSD that you went through this program? And so does Bo, your puppy, provide that for you? Or was Bo your alpha dog to alpha test, not alpha lead dog necessarily, but your alpha test dog so that you would find others for the program? Is that,
yes,
how
sir.
did that work out?
Actually, both of those are correct. Number one, I did need a dog. I needed something. And we call him the dog father. So
he's the dog father of the program.
He was the very first one. Now, his training was nowhere near what our dogs go through now. It's light years away today than what he went through. And there are some requests that he won't perform at all, but he still responds to me when I have issues.
How does he respond?
It depends on the situation. A lot of times he'll give me deep pressure therapy, and that's where he'll just get up into me and let me just hold on and hug him.
Because he's sensing your aggravation.
And see, that's part of the bonding process, because we've had puppies as early as 16 weeks start alerting to a person's night terrors. Because when a person's triggering, they have a chemical change that takes place in the body. And these dogs have a sense of smell 400 times better than ours. So by building that really unique bond together, the puppy already knows when something is wrong and will pick up on it. Now, a lot of times the puppy doesn't know what to do, but it will do something. So like with night terrors, once the puppy's potty trained, it has to sleep on the bed with the individual. So generally part of my problem with PTSD is that I don't sleep at night because of hypervigilance. Any slight sound and I'm awake. But he'll come and just lay on my legs, and that's kind of like a weighted blanket. And I'll go to sleep, and then I'll sleep through the night, and then in the morning he's back on the bed again, on my legs again.
So I take it there's no Great Danes or Bos Shepherds or Anatolians in the program if they're sleeping on the bed.
Absolutely not. We did at one time have an Italian Mastiff. Puppy's name was Whoopi. Sweet dog. But yeah, he was for me. But I also, having been a Marine, you know, you want to do things always the right way. That's part of the ethos of being a Marine.
Yes,
and
sir.
So I wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing through this program as well. And that's why we started developing our own training program, because we didn't think that the retail side was really helping, because number one, retail trainers don't understand PTSD, and people with PTSD can be difficult to work with, but you have to read them very carefully because they might be triggering, and we want to avoid them triggering. So you have to at times back off. But also, a lot of retail trainers don't understand service dogs either. The things like rollover and play dead, those are cute things for a pet to do, but it's not necessarily something that a service dog needs to do. So that was the motivation, but I wanted to make sure with Bo that we were doing the right thing. And as I said, we started out with just one. We were just going to place one dog.
Why? Why was that? The vision was one. What was the thought of that?
It was just a challenge for our chapter, and it just continued to grow. And as I told you earlier, this coming Monday, we are planning on graduating our 82nd dog.
And how much time has the program been going that you've placed the 82 dog?
We became a nonprofit in June of 2016. We were with the Military Order of the Purple Heart for the first year, but then we decided that as a service organization, you can't get grants the way that a nonprofit can. So the move was made for a financial reason to be able to help build the program. And so we became a nonprofit, a 501c3 in June of 2016. And so from April of 2015 to now, we've got our 82nd dog being graduated. And it just built on itself. In fact, I had no business plan whatsoever. I
like most great companies.
Exactly. I had no business plan. All I knew was that people kept coming to us and saying, "This is working. This is working," and I was seeing the results in individual lives, and that's more key than anything is to see those results. And then, it's just phenomenal to watch. But what's so good about this is that these dogs are so sensitive and attuned to people that a lot of our dogs will actually respond to other people who are hurting at the same time. And Bo has done deep pressure therapy on a loved one of mine who was really having a hard time, and he wouldn't sit still in this environment. I mean, I'd ask him to sit and he'd sit, or I'd ask him down and he'd sit there or go down for like a minute or so, but then he was right back up and he was very anxious. And finally, he just said, "Okay, I've had enough of this." He went over and gave the person deep pressure therapy without me doing anything. And that's when I started realizing that these dogs respond to other people as well. 3 of our dogs have become seizure alert dogs based on the relationship, because the dogs, again, they know when there is a chemical change that takes place, and so they can respond to those things. We've had 3 of them also become diabetic alert dogs too.
Now, were they for a specific hero, or you're training them and then you're like, oh, they have this particular skill, so then they left the program and went to help?
No. Okay. They when they get the puppy, they train their puppy, so they go through training together.
Yep.
And we teach them how to train the dog and work with their dog. And so they have that puppy all the way through the training program. And when they graduate, then that puppy is their service dog, and we don't charge them for it. So they've got that bond with them now. And the bonding generally takes place usually in the 4th or the 5th month of the program. It's where we start seeing kind of like a paradigm shift that takes place in the person's mind. Because at first, all they're worried about is just getting the basic canine training down, and they're not really listening to what the dog is telling them. And dogs do communicate. It's just that we don't understand a lot of times what they're communicating or why they're communicating. So about the 4th or 5th month, at the 5th month, they have to go through an observation period, a 2-week observation period, where they write everything down. I was here, this is what was happening, this is what my dog was doing at the same time. And it's at that time they start seeing that the dog is responding and listening to them and then telling them that something is wrong too. And it just amazes me what these animals are capable of. You know, people say, well, that's just a dumb dog. No. There's no way. With their sense of smell, it's just unbelievable because they can pick up on things that most people can't.
How are they chosen? Is it a certain breed that you look for, or is it like, are these purebreds? Do you go to shelters and get puppies? Where does the supply of puppies come from?
We use specific breeders, and the reason for that is because I don't want to use backyard breeders or puppy mills. And so the breeders that we use have to do specific things while the puppy's in the litter, because there's a socialization that has to take place before the 8th week of age. And if that's not done in the litter, then dogs tend to be shy. And so that's a little bit harder to work through. So the breeders that we work with, we ask them to do several different things while the puppy's in the litter. But we use primarily the English Golden Retriever. And Bo is an English Golden Retriever. The reason for that is that their temperament is just perfect with PTSD. We've tried German Shepherds. German Shepherds are great dogs. They're extremely intelligent dogs. We call them, though, the Marine Corps of service dogs.
Because, a little more hardcore.
Exactly. They have to have things consistently done the same way. And if you don't do it, then you're going to have issues with it because they're going to try and correct that. And the people that we work with, there's no, not saying anything's bad, but because of their PTSD, they don't have the ability to provide that consistency. And German Shepherds, like I said, are great dogs. We've used Poodles. Poodles are great. Poodles have a tendency, though, to mouth, so they like to put their mouth on people. And so we have to correct that issue with a Poodle, but Poodles are very intelligent, too. We do use Doodles, so we've had Lab Doodles, we've had Golden Doodles, and then we have an Aussie Doodle, which I'm beginning to like very much. So, but particularly, I would say 85% of the dogs that we've had in our program have been English Golden Retrievers.
And you guys purchase them from the puppy breeders, or do the puppy breeders donate them into the program, or both?
Some do occasionally, but we buy them at cost, and they are expensive.
Yes.
Particularly because they are a breed, and we are actually hoping to start our own breeding program because I want to expand. I don't want to be just in Colorado. I want to take this to other veterans and other firefighters and police officers across the United States. But we need to have a good supply in that case. And so we don't want to be a puppy mill either, but we want to be able to have a puppy available when we have a veteran. The rescues, I would love to have rescues, but unfortunately rescues can have post-traumatic stress like a human, and without knowing the history, then you've got a huge liability on that back end, and so we can't afford that liability.
How about the humans, the heroes? Is there a selection process that they go through to make sure that they will be good candidates? Because I'm sure there might be a level of PTSD where they're not ready to handle this extra thing. Sure. How does that process unfold? That's
one of the things that we interview them. We make sure. Yes, they do have to go through a selection process. We don't have a long wait list. It's not like a lot of other organizations that have 1 year to 3 year wait. But they have to be, number one, they have to be in treatment. Because my philosophy is if you're not in treatment, you don't want to get better. And that's not the purpose of our organization. Our purpose of our organization is to give them a better life, as close to possible as what they had before their trauma occurred. Now, we'll never get them back to that spot, but we can get them close. But they have to stay in treatment throughout the entire program. If they get out of treatment, they can lose the dog. And
Wow.
It's written into an agreement, so they have to stay in treatment. But the other thing is that we want to make sure that they continue the program. So they have to attend training classes on a regular schedule too. So if they get behind too far, then there's the potential of losing the dog as well. So we do have standards in the program that they have to adhere to. And it's not so difficult with the individuals that we work with, because they're used to that kind of environment anyway. And so it helps them to be able to focus on things a little bit better. So they have to stay in treatment. But the key thing, Jim, is that they have to have a desire to get better. If they don't have that desire to get better, it doesn't work. When we first started, we had some individuals that possibly didn't want to get better. They just wanted a dog. And I can understand that, because we weren't really that defined at the time. And it's partially our fault, if not anything else. But without that desire, it just doesn't happen. They got to have the desire to get a better life. And if they don't, it doesn't work right.
That makes sense. And here's an interesting question that hit me as you were talking about the cycle between them getting better and the dog. And we've talked so much about puppies, and the program is, I don't know if the program is mature enough to have had this, but let's just say someone goes through the entire life cycle of that dog. That dog passes away. I've had the blessing and curse of putting down 2 dogs that I loved very much, and it wrecked me. Mm-hmm. And so with these dogs being service dogs and being these people's connections, is the plan that once they go through and that puppy's life, they become a mature dog, and then that dog, it passes, do they re-enter in for another puppy, or maybe they're better by then and don't need a puppy?
That's been one of my biggest fears all along, is what happens if one of the puppies dies. And we have had one puppy die from parvo. And it's nothing that the veteran did. It's just parvo is so prevalent in Colorado, and it just happens. And we've had one dog die from cancer. That was actually, it was a female veteran, and she brought her into the program. And so if they bring a dog in, depending on the dog, we will bring it in and train it as well. But the grieving process has been something of major concern for me, is because I want to make sure that we don't go through that huge trauma that takes place when you lose I think of Bo. Bo is now 7 years old, and life expectancy of these dogs is 12 years. And I don't like to think about that future prospect.
Right.
But I know, and one of the things that I do in the program is we make sure we tell them this dog is going to die someday. So you need to understand that, and you need to keep that in the back of your mind, so that they don't get, the promise that, well, this is going to last forever.
Yes.
And it's not, and it's unfortunate, but I've been, that's probably one of my goals, is to find somebody who can help us go through that canine grieving process, so that,
Wow, that's impressive that someone to go through that. I like that. I'm writing that down, actually. I think that could be a key portion for where things go that makes a difference in the lives of these people, because they're hopefully growing, and while they're growing attached, they're growing more than they realize, and they'll be able to understand and deal with that. So
exactly.
I literally wrote that down. I'm really, really fascinated by what you guys are doing in the community and wanting to grow it. When it comes to volunteers, people coming in, do you guys take volunteer trainers that help train the folks? How big is your team? What does it look like? How often do you accept new people into the program?
We are looking for trainers right now. We want people who want to become trainers. They have to learn our way of training, though, because our way of training is a lot different than just the regular basic canine training skills. So the way we do things, our thought process on everything, there's always a reason why we do everything we do. And I don't normally say this, but the word yes, make them use the word yes. Again, because it's a powerful word. But I had a professor tell me that when you consistently use the word yes, it starts rebuilding the neural networks in the brain that have been damaged because it is so powerful. And so even little things like that is, we have to make sure that the individuals, and I would love to have more trainers because it will help us expand. Right now we're looking at potentially expanding into Wyoming and into Missouri. And so we are going to actively start reaching out for trainers. And I will train anybody as long as they want to come in and learn how we do it. And we need puppy sitters all the time. Puppy sitters that know our program.
What's a puppy sitter? What would they do?
They would, in cases where we have a veteran that may have to go to the hospital, and the puppy can't go to the hospital, then they would go to a puppy sitter for a week or so. And the puppy sitter knows our training philosophy, so the training philosophy is not broken when it goes to that individual.
Yeah.
So we look for puppy sitters. We've had occasions where I just recently had 2 veterans that I bought puppies for, and then 2 days before puppy pickup, they dropped out. And so I have 2 puppies, and so now everything's taken care of and they've been placed, but still it's that, all of a sudden it's a turmoil because now I've got to find somebody to house those puppies and take care of them. So that's where the puppy sitters come into play, is that they're trained in our philosophy, they're trained in handling puppies, and so they can take a puppy for a short period of time, and then we're still following the same philosophy on everything.
Are there other positions of volunteer or paid positions through the organization that you guys are looking for that someone listening might be able to say, man, I'd like to fill that role?
I would love to have somebody come in and do administrative work. I'm pretty much chief cook and bottle washer, and I always do need help in that. If I had somebody to come in and do administrative work, and it's not difficult work, it's just keeping records because we make sure that we track everything that goes on and keep records for liability reasons. But that takes away from my time to be able to plan and try to do the things that we need to do in order to expand.
Is that something that someone would have to be in-house to do, or is it something that they could do remotely?
They could potentially do it virtually. When COVID hit, we were actually already training virtually. We had a veteran in Durango and one in Pagosa Springs, and they were already training virtually. So when COVID hit, it wasn't a big deal for us to go virtual. But it's better in person, but we could still handle it. But I would love to have more trainers and then have them go through the training program. And one of the things I always tell people is that if you really want to see how this works, go through the training with a veteran, because then you really truly see what happens and what takes place in that person's life over the course of a year and 9 months to a year. And it really is amazing I see all of everybody at the very beginning. So I know them at their worst, but then I also know them when they graduate, and it's a true joy for them to graduate, and they really do become a part of life again.
What are some of the stories you've heard that you could share with us about the difference that one of these puppies that then changes into their dog companion? How has it helped the people that they've served, these heroes, make life better?
Well, as I said, it's about the 5th month when that change starts taking place, when they start seeing that the dog is actually communicating to them. I've had veterans tell me in the 4th month, this dog isn't doing anything for me. And well, just wait. Let's just wait and see. And then we go through the observation period, and then they turn in their observation sheet, and I'm looking at 10 different episodes and 10 different places where the dog is actually doing something to tell them that this is going on. And I'll use myself as a good example. One of the remaining things that I had with PTSD was anger issues. Anger is a huge symptom with PTSD, and it becomes really more like a rage at times. And when you get angry, you just don't give up in 15 minutes. Being in the Marine Corps, it was, I'm not giving up. You're going to lose, I'm going to win. And then 2 weeks later, you're still in the same position, still stuck in that position. It wasn't until I had Bo that after a couple of times, I would start getting angry with somebody and getting into a heated argument. He would just turn around and look at me and bark at me.
And you didn't train him to do that. That was his response.
That was his response
feeling
to
your
my
energy.
Anger. Yes. And it took me a couple times to realize what he was doing. Is telling me, I don't like this situation. You need to stop it right now. And so I started thinking, if I continue down this self-destructive path of anger, I'm going to be miserable for weeks. I'm going to have guilt. I'm going to have grief because I got in a fight with somebody and all this other stuff. Or I could just listen to my dog and turn around and walk away and just say, this is not worth it. And so I have rarely gotten angry in several years now. And when I do,
he's right there.
He's going to tell me. He's going to tell me to stop it. And so it's things like that they do. It's just like night terrors. I had a wife tell me one time, she said, thank you so much. She said, I don't get beat up at night anymore because his night terrors were so violent that he would hit her.
He was retching through the bed and
Exactly.
she would get contact. Yeah,
exactly. And I remember one time when I was younger, I was in a night terror and I woke up and I was standing over my wife with my fist ready to go. And I thought, man, this is not a good thing. But that's what you deal with post-traumatic stress and that's one of the things that the courts have learned about PTSD is that people do things that they don't understand why they do it a lot of times. And so the courts have now the veterans court situation where I think it's a good thing to have because there's times in my life that if you'd asked me why I did that, I'd say, I don't know. I just did it. So,
wow.
But it's just these little things that take place, and the dog helps guide them out of those situations. And that's what a service dog is supposed to do. A service dog is supposed to mitigate the disability. And mitigation means to lessen it or get rid of it completely. And as I said, PTSD is not going to go away. I mean, there are studies that say it can go away, but a lot of people live with it for a long, long time. And
what a great management tool that your dog becomes your management tool, your companion, your comfort, and I'm assuming the puppy turned into dog becomes part of the family because all these people are not single and isolated alone. Some of them have families, and like you say, with the person with night terrors, where she said, thank you for giving me my safety through my husband. The dog helps become part of that family unit as well, right?
It's not only families, though, but it's also a lot of times it's also the workplace environment that sees it. I have a veteran that actually I met his boss at the outdoor
at the expo where we met. Yep.
And he told me, he said, this dog is just phenomenal. He said, when they're in the office, he said, if I start getting upset, it will come over to me and take me by the hand and drag me away from my phone.
And maybe I needed to come by my phone too.
And see, it wasn't trained to do that, but it just knows that this is the object that's causing a problem. I've got one veteran that had problems with watching major media. He would sit there and watch the news and get mad and angry, and it was just PTSD boiling over. His dog would come over and take the phone away and take the remote control away from him and take it away. And because in the dog's mind, this is the object that's causing the problem.
Yes.
I need to get rid of it.
Wow.
And that's why we don't want to use fear. It's because we want them to have the ability to respond in those situations. Real short, but Bo met a guy who actually helped the guy diagnose his cancer.
How did that happen?
He was in a group that I was in, and Bo would always go to him. And when Bo goes to somebody, I don't stop him because I know what he's doing. He's generally going because that person is hurting. And usually it's probably because of PTSD or something that's going on in their life at that point in time. And because it was in a group for PTSD, I just assumed that it was PTSD. And I just let Bo go. And every time he went to Bo, this guy, and it wasn't until about 2 years later, after he was out of remission, that he came up to me and he told me, he said, "You never knew this." He said, "But you said one time in group that Bo will go to people who are hurting." And Bo kept coming to me every time he saw me. And he said, I started putting two and two together. And he said, had it not been for Bo, I wouldn't have gone to the doctor and gotten diagnosed with cancer.
Oh my goodness, what a great story.
I mean, seriously. And see, that's just to me is so phenomenal that these dogs have the ability to do things like that. And that's why, like I said, I don't stop him when he goes to somebody because I know that he really is going to somebody who's hurting.
Who's in need.
Yeah. Oh, he loves everybody in the world.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but he'll go to people that are hurting, and like I said, I won't stop him because of that.
Wow, Frank, this has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
If people want to volunteer, donate, I don't know if you guys have gear, t-shirts, hats, etc. that you sell. If they want to connect with you to learn more about the organization or to participate in some way, what could they do to find you?
They could find us at heropuppyforlife.org.
And it's Hero, not Heroes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, the whole name is Heroes Puppy for Life. And it's Heroes with an apostrophe S. It's because the puppy is for the hero for their life.
Singular. It's a singular Heroes puppy.
Yeah.
Yep.
But heropuppyforlife.org. And all of our information is there. And as I said, you know, I could use volunteers for anything. Even if it's just to come in and sit in a training session and maybe hold a puppy or sometimes hold Bo, because Bo loves to go to everybody, even in a training session. So at times I have to have somebody hold him just to get him to stay out of the training process.
Nice. I love it. I love it. I got one more question for you.
Sure.
In all your experience, everything from your military service and seeing this horrible thing that we call war and being in family and now serving veterans and serving animals and being a great leader of animals, is there one piece of advice that you've picked up or taught or have learned along the way that you would like to share with our audience as a life guiding principle for you?
I think it is to give to others. I did a lot of things when I was trying to find my niche in life, and but I always learned one thing is that you always want to help others, because if you help others, it will help you along the way. And I don't, as I said, we don't charge our veterans anything. And I really don't ever want to have to do that. Now, the day may come when we have to do that for obvious other reasons, but I don't want to do that. But if you give of your heart, you will be fulfilled in what you do. And I think that's the thing I've learned more than anything else, is that I see on a regular basis, I see the changes that take place for these individuals. And, and people tell me all the time, well, what do you do? And it's really, I don't do anything. I just facilitate. It's the puppy that does all the changing. But we just have found, I think, the right way to do it. I'm not saying all the other programs are wrong, but I know that what we do does work. We just finished up a research study that hasn't been published yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. It had phenomenal results. And so what I'd like to do is be able to take that and start going to others and say, look, we can expand this and we can prove that this is even better than what we see in just this small sample. So I think it's, just like anything else, it's just giving of yourself.
Nice. Well, Mr. Frank Griggs, this has been an absolute pleasure for me, an honor, sir, to have you here. So thank you. Thank you so much for starting Heroes Puppies for Life. It's amazing work. You always have a friend here at Ramos Law, and I hope that if you're listening to this, that if it touched your hearts, pulled on your heartstrings, please reach out. Donate something, time, talent, energy, resources, treasures, something to make this group better. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and share this with your family and friends. And in the meantime, keep going out there and making a difference.
Thank you.